We're talking today about how we can help startups, how it takes a village I was using Hillary Clinton's line here, and I know I've raised kids. It does take a village to raise kids, but it also takes a village to launch a startup. And getting your startup in the right environment is very important. Today we have two guest speakers coming on. We have John Wensveen. And what's interesting about John is he runs the Innovation Center at NSU, Nova Southeastern University. They launched an innovation center called the Allen Levan Center. He's going to talk a little bit more about that and what they can do for startups. We also have Carrie Purcell, who is the co-founder and CEO of Tech-AdaptiKa. Carrie, welcome. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. I just wanted you to introduce your company or your organization, John and Carrie. Take about 60 seconds, and then we'll jump right into questions.
I greatly appreciate it. My name is John Wensveen. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Nova Southeastern University here in Fort Lauderdale, which is the largest private university in the state of Florida. And I'm also Executive Director of the Levan Center of Innovation. And we have created what we believe to be the world's very first theme park for entrepreneurs that supports the ideate, incubate, accelerate, and post-accelerated phases. So basically, birth of an idea through successful exit or global expansion. And my role is to oversee this theme park that we have built so that we act as an economic development engine here in South Florida with local, regional, national, and international impact. But the easiest way to say it is we've reverse engineered the founder's journey. So success is measured from day one rather than trying to find it down the road. And I can expand upon that throughout the next hour.
The startup theme park. I love that. I've never heard it described as that. Carrie, tell us a little bit about your organization as well.
Yeah, happy to. Very cool, John. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you as well. So yeah, Carrie Purcell from Tech-AdaptiKa. I'm co-founder and CEO. Tech-AdaptiKa is my fourth startup as a founder, my fifth as an equity partner, and I advise on a few other startups and boards. I'm also about to launch the Toronto chapter of GLOW, the Global Leaders Organization. If anybody happens to be calling in from Canada and you want to chat about that, let me know. So Tech-AdaptiKa, I should let you know everything that all of the businesses are involved in: virtual education, virtual tourism, some kind of virtual experience typically related to education. So at Tech-AdaptiKa, we've been doing metaverses for the last 4 years plus, again, with a focus in education initially. But of course, for this chat, I'm going to talk about our experiences with incubators and accelerators and the fact that we've been able to launch our first very own virtual incubator. So I'll tell you more about that space as it comes up, but maybe that's enough for an introduction.
Perfect. And Carrie, why don't you kick it off with telling us how you can help startups increase their chances of success if they were to utilize your virtual incubator?
Sure, of course. So, as a startup entrepreneur myself, I have had the chance to participate in physical incubators in the past, and I've been able to get services from that, including recommendations and discounts on things like legal advice and contracts, accounting advice, and working with bookkeeping and connections with investors, and a lot of those services that are really important as we're launching and growing our businesses. Our virtual incubator is no different, but we really try to focus on the needs of entrepreneurs. And one of the big areas that we do focus on is investment. So we do a weekly, we call it the VC boot camp, where we invite prominent investors, VCs, obviously M&A people, allow you to have that connection with them, but also learn from them, pitch back to them, ask any questions that you want. We also run entrepreneurship training, so actual courses on our incubator. Most importantly, the reason that we're running a virtual incubator or virtual metaverses in general is to connect people who are not in the same space. So it's really just that sense of community, and being a startup, being an entrepreneur, or being a CEO can be very lonely. And in general, the pandemic has magnified that sense of isolation that a lot of people feel, and Clubhouse came about as a way to connect people. The virtual incubator space on the metaverse is the same idea. So it's really about that community building and that network and services and education where we can fit those in as well.
So some of your customers, do they need to be Canadian, or is this open to startups from all over the world?
Yeah, our so the company is global. So Tech-AdaptiKa, the Adaptica metaverses are all over the world, and some of them are based wherever they are, but they service people globally. The incubator that we launched last year was a government-funded project, meaning that for Canadian entrepreneurs, it is free to join. For service providers, you can join from anywhere you want. So we have investors joining from all over the world. And again, it's free for them. For anything beyond that, it becomes a paid service.
Well, I think that's interesting because we've done a number of shows here on coaching, and I have a personal CEO coach, and to be quite frank, he's about $60,000 a year, and most startups can't afford those kind of fees. But you're telling me you have a service that's free. John, I know you have a service that's free as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I have another question for you, John, after that.
Sure. So what we did is 2 years ago, we formed a public-private partnership between the university and Broward County, and both came in as co-investors, 50-50, and initially $10 million, and today it's a $15 million investment. And the reason that we put all those resources in and collected more was so that we could reduce or remove the barriers of entry for the entrepreneur, particularly at that early stage, whether it's ideate or incubate, with the goal that we'd set them up for success. So the majority of our programs, our co-programs around the founder's journey, are free of charge. We're bootstrapping them internally, and then what we will do next is go to industry, which we're now engaging with to help sponsor these events. But these industry partners would also be investing or doing corporate challenges, corporate innovation challenges with these entrepreneurs as we move forward. So we're trying to provide everything free of charge where we possibly can, whether it's industry support through grants, which we've been successful in securing to date, and the philanthropic model at the same time. There's a whole combination of factors behind the scenes to do that.
That's great. And just think about that. You are a startup out there. If you're in the audience, there are free services that can help increase your chances of success when you launch that startup. Can you tell us, John, what are some of the things your institution does to help startups increase their chances of success?
Sure. So the way that I like to position ourselves is like Switzerland, and we're not owned by anybody per se, and we're the gorilla glue that links the South Florida innovation ecosystem together. So internally, how do we commercialize ideas and promote and spawn that innovation mindset within the institution? But externally of the university, where our primary focus is, it's working with that entrepreneurial community to create awareness and find those entrepreneurs at the early stage so that we can engage them and further and take them to the next level. And then what we do with that is we combine all of these wraparound service components to all of those that are accepted into our programs or into our membership pool so that they have that free or reduced access to the business plans, the strategic plans, marketing, branding, legal, finance, accounting, HR, talent, self-care management, which is another component to our programming to think about the human body as part of your journey. So when we go back to this concept of a theme park, what we are doing and continue to do is identify rides, if you will, and at every twist, every turn throughout that founder's journey, there's some kind of return on investment, not just for the entrepreneur, but for all of the stakeholders that make them successful along that journey. And then we make that happen all under 54,000 square feet of purpose-built space, and then connect the world virtually at the same time.
There's a lot of confusion out there around incubator, accelerator. I know you just did a TEDx speech on, I believe, innovation centers. And can you describe the difference between them? I know here in Fort Lauderdale, I think it's pretty clear we run an incubator. It's a shared office space, but they're every one of the companies I've invested in. So it looks like it's an incubator because we've invested in it and we provide support to all the companies that are in this building. What is an innovation center and an accelerator? Could you just tell us the difference between them?
Sure. So I'm glad you mentioned the TED Talk because really what I was doing was trying to show the world that the future is already here. What are we going to do about it? And historically, people are familiar generally with what an incubator and an accelerator is. And an incubator is really an environment that allows you to take ideas and explore them further to the point that they have some potential success to become commercialized, whether it's a product or a service, or maybe it's even a process. An accelerator is when we're at that next level of engagement where we've already got more than an idea and we're looking for the infrastructure and resources that allow us to scale the idea. So it's entry into a commercialized market, or maybe I'm already operating, I've got proof of concept, I'm generating revenue and I'm a certain size and I'm looking to get to that next level in terms of growth. And we can define that in many loose terms. And then when we talk about an innovation center, I personally believe that incubators and accelerators will not exist in the future in the way that we know them. And we tried to not even use the word incubation or acceleration in terms of we're one of those, because I believe that an innovation center, and I'll talk more about Innovation Center 2.0, an innovation center is an incubator and an accelerator all under one roof combined with a super mall of services, if you will. So I think that's what the future is going to entail, and that we'll gradually stop using the terminology of incubator and accelerator. They'll always exist, but they have a very specific purpose versus an innovation center, which has a more diversified purpose that encompasses both the incubator and accelerator, plus a whole host of other things.
Oh, it's very interesting. So if you're in the audience now or you're listening to this afterwards and you have an idea, these are organizations you can reach out to. If someone in Canada, Carrie, has an idea and they need help launching it, like what do they do? What's their first step? Like where do they go? How do they actually connect with your organization, which I find is interesting that it's virtual. I think that opens it up so much compared to a physical, although there's always advantages and disadvantages as well. Because I know in the Levan Center, it's a phenomenal facility, and I've done cohorts where I speak on the concept of startups, and I help some of these entrepreneurs launch their businesses, and I've done it both in person and through Zoom, and I can say they're different experiences, but I've been able to do it because of the virtual experience. How does someone in Canada just get started with you?
Yeah. So let me just talk about the virtual experience first, because what we're doing is very different than what a lot of people have experienced. So in the metaverse space, we create 3D virtual environments that replicate the real world, and in some cases imaginary worlds. And we're still part of a physical incubator. It hasn't been open for the last 2 years, right? So our offices there are closed, our boardroom is closed, some of our equipment's locked up there. The reason that the Canadian government got on board with funding our initiative is because regardless of whether you have that physical space to go to or not, and regardless of whether there's a pandemic, people are spread. And in Canada, we have a massive country with a small population, which means people are spread out across the country, many of whom are in these remote areas where in order to get to a physical space, they're traveling quite a bit and they can't do it very often. We're not, the future, maybe the metaverse will be part of the future, absolutely, but we're not trying to suggest somebody picks a physical space or a virtual space and that we only get to have one. What we're trying to do is improve that virtual experience so that I walk in the form of an avatar, and I have people that I can walk up and talk to. I have a space that I can go and have a presentation or have a panel speak. I can go and have private meetings. We have places where people do pitches with investors and they pull up their pitch deck and they pull up their website. We have exhibitor areas where entrepreneurs will have a marketplace and actually show what they're working on, and lots of integrations to systems that people already use that exist, including LinkedIn and including their e-commerce sites and so on. So it's a pretty cool way of experiencing a virtual, any kind of virtual experience, but particularly a virtual incubator where, as you noted, like initially it came out of a shared workplace. You go into the office and they give you a desk to sit at. So we have virtual desks in our virtual space. So assuming that people find us and we're putting a lot of effort into that, they're likely going to start on our website and they're just going to go to the incubator webpage and they can do a download. Our software does exist as a web version, and it can exist as a full immersive VR with a headset, but in order to be accessible and to take into account hardware and bandwidth requirements, most people are just going to do a download onto their own computer, and they're going to sit in front of their computer but still experience that 3D immersive feel. Happy to expand on it, but hopefully that
Oh,
answers some of your
this is
questions.
like I've never heard of this before. This idea that you can actually be inside startup environment, but it's actually virtual. That's just amazing. That's absolutely incredible. I know Jeff and Michelle, you may have a question, then we can open it up to the audience for questions as well. Michelle, go ahead. Michelle, we're not hearing you here.
I'm here. Like, I'm so impressed how your business models are evolving. So I'm curious, I'm going to go very esoteric here. What are the common parameters that you see of people that are succeeding in your incubators? I know I'm taking this in a different direction, but I
That's a
hope you
great
can.
question. I like it.
Yeah,
That's the show. That's what we try to do here on the Serial Entrepreneur Hour every week is crack that code. And for the ones that are succeeding, what are some of the things they're doing correctly? Start with you,
yeah.
John.
Sure. So it's actually a really great question. It's funny. Just before we got on Clubhouse today, I was having the very same conversation with somebody. So a lot of people at the early stage may have been working on an idea for, in some cases, years, but they didn't know that there was any kind of resource out there to help guide them down the path, and they feel very lost. So what happens is when somebody comes to us, whether it's an individual or a small group of people, or maybe if it's a smaller company, and they get a better understanding of what this theme park looks like in terms of infrastructure and potential access to resources, and they truly see that there's a map that will get them from A to Z, if you will. What we find is that many of these individuals are very passionate about what they're doing. That's the common denominator among all of these entrepreneurs, but in many cases they are lost. And what happens is you build them up, because in many cases they're broken down and frustrated. So there are different ways that you can do that, and you make them feel really great and that they're the best at what they're going to be able to do. And there's different ways of doing that. But those that we're seeing that are successful are actually measured with an intake committee in our particular case, where we have a group of individuals from industry, whether they're investors or they're startups with successful exits or they're proven entrepreneurs, and they actually analyze the potential for success for the individual and the concept that they're pitching. And then we bring those in looking at the best success stories, and then once they're in, we then analyze and provide that map, if you will. And everybody has a slightly different path, but there's a generic formula that we can apply, and then we customize it around those individuals. But the heart of it's passion. Everybody has that. They just don't necessarily know how to get there. And as long as they maintain that, anybody can do anything. And then we can assess where that entrepreneur is, because often they believe they're at a certain stage, and in reality, they're either way below or they're way above or they're right on target. And having an understanding of where they are in that trajectory makes all the difference in the world. And then we align them with the resources from that point onwards. And that really is what's leading to success in our case.
So, Carrie, in your case,
Yeah. So a little bit different in the way that we're running. So we're typically not taking people through specific programming. So what we find is we're looking, the people that are spaces, how often are they logging in, how long are they staying, which sessions are they attending, are they signing up for courses, can we add in a little bit of incentive for them, whether it's leaderboards or rewards or tokens that they can use within the space. Part where we find people get stuck, and this has come up already, this is a common theme, but it's different stages in their business where they don't know how to move forward. And I mean that they don't think they can move forward, right? So we've just gone through a pandemic, which drastically affected a lot of people's businesses and business models. And if they weren't able to pivot or thrive in that environment, they didn't see a future. And sometimes it's money or cash flow, right? So it's accessing different types of funding, whether it's loans and debt and so on. And so it's just being able to have their level of engagement, but then directing people to the resources available to them at those points. We're extremely fortunate to be in Canada, where there are a lot of programs available, and it's not unique only to Canada. So across Europe and the United States, there are a lot of grant funds and a lot of programs that are going to make sure that entrepreneurs do have that opportunity to get past that step that they're stuck on. And then specifically, which I won't go into, but I'll just say specifically, because it's a government funded program for us, we do have a lot of reporting. So we are looking very specifically at when people join and how many people join and where they move through their business cycle and what they access and so on. So just a short answer there.
I don't want to make a deal here, but John and Carrie, you have this VR metaverse technology. John, you have this innovation center, which is very localized, but if I remember correct, you're also trying to think about how can you get global exposure as well. I'm just curious, Carrie, could an
Mm-hmm.
incubator like John's license your technology, or is that, am I in the wrong,
No,
going down the wrong path?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So within our incubator, John and his group can join in whatever capacity makes sense. But what Tech-AdaptiKa does the rest of the time is recreate these physical spaces. And it sounds like John's space is an amazing space. So we'd want to look at what elements of that we can bring into a virtual world and then open it across the globe or whatever, however he wants to reach, and parallel the programming, whether it's a pure redundancy, a virtual edition, or a hybrid model.
Hey, I have a question. So
I just wanted to
I'm
get, Michelle, before we do that, I just want to get John's response to that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I
Matchmaker.
think there's no such thing as competition. The whole ecosystem is about collaboration. So I'm sure there are different ways that, like Carrie and I, could work together as an example. But I also want to talk about something else that we're doing when we talk about having local, regional, national, international impact. We also have virtual accessible programming and access to events and different types of resources. And we've also set our innovation center up so that you can actually register your legal entity here. It can be your LLC as an example. It can also be your virtual headquarters. And we're now finding that we're attracting entrepreneurs from other states and even other countries that want to be a part of the emerging South Florida tech scene, but they don't know how to access it. So we provide a gateway to do that. And working with somebody like Carrie and her organization, it better links those Canadian roots. And incidentally, Carrie, I was born and raised in Vancouver. And the other thing that we are doing is we're negotiating with innovative nations from around the world. So looking at Canada, looking at Israel, Dubai, Chile, Romania, as an example, where we'll have country desks physically resident here, and then we'll reciprocate with a desk and a chair on the other end. And therefore, we have the power of country networks, and then they can localize it at the different levels to find those new entrepreneurs or those budding entrepreneurs, technologies, the investment community, and literally shrink the innovation ecosystem together. But it's all about collaboration, and it's not one organization or individual that can do it. It's working with other organizations like Carrie's of the world.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I know when we run a lot of e-commerce companies here in the incubator, and I'm connected with Norm Farrar, who does a show on Startup Club around Ecom Weekly, and it's a big challenge for Canadian companies to sell in e-commerce in the United States, and they need to partner with a center like the Alan Levan Center. And it just, I didn't even know that you had that service available until now, but I think it makes a lot of sense that you can help foreign startups actually create a virtual address, and it allows for an easier expansion for startups without the expensive costs that would normally be associated with expanding to a new country. Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I'll just use Israel as an example. And South Florida and Israel have extremely tight connections. In fact, the volume of trade that occurs between the region here in South Florida and Israel is greater than most countries. And if you think about entrepreneurs in Israel, where they're in a very small country, very focused on technology, they rely on exporting those ideas to the rest of the world. So that's just one example where now you can bring Israelis into South Florida for market entry, and we can assist with that, set up the company here physically, and then we can also look at opportunities in Israel that South Florida entrepreneurs could sell their goods to, if you will, among other things. And we've seen through COVID how many companies got rid of brick and mortar and then decided that they're not going to do that any longer. So in our particular case, we've even got some pretty major corporations that are seriously considering 100% virtual forevermore, and their global headquarters can be in an innovation center because it doesn't require anything other than hardware and software. So there are some of those budding opportunities and some smaller examples where that's already taken place here. But it does reduce or remove barriers of entry. It does reduce costs, and it allows instant access to a network because you're the matchmaker that ordinarily they wouldn't have the opportunity to pursue.
Oh, that's fascinating. I know, Michelle, you had a question. I cut you off earlier.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here like I have a business that might be struggling or a new idea. Like just break it down for me. What do I need to do?
So in our particular case, number one, we have to figure out a way so that you're aware that we exist. And we're constantly looking at all of those different challenges to be able to make that happen. So how do we get to the IDA person or the early stage entrepreneur? And most won't know that this exists as a resource. So that's one of our responsibilities, is to increase that awareness. Once we've been connected, we will invite you in, or we'll have a virtual meeting or a telephone call, whatever makes sense, wherever you are, and we'll get a better understanding through a very scripted set of questions and discussion points to determine what the opportunity is. And then with that, we can make an initial assessment to say that you will lay within one of these pillars, if you will, and then we will get you in here physically or virtually, and then we'll put you on a path. And there's a very formalized path, or there's the less formal path, depending on what you need. It's more like a smorgasbord option where you only need X, Y, and Z, versus others that truly need all of the groceries in the shop to get them to the next level. And then it's a continuous process at any point. But we can accept you in here at any stage of your journey from the IDA to the incubate to I've already got a business with proven revenue generation and an employee base of X dollars. I'm looking for the merger, the acquisition, the IPO, the international expansion opportunities, the franchise opportunities. We have all of those capabilities in-house, and we'll figure out where you are best suited and do everything we can to support you around that.
Yeah, can you give us a web address? I know we're going to put that in the show notes, but I think it would be useful for us to just say it out loud too. Can you just give us a web address, and then we'll jump to you, Carrie, with that question. But
Sure.
John, give us a web address.
Sure, it's Nova, nova.edu/innovation. And I will warn everybody that is a ghost website. It is not very great because we're in the process of building a true .com that reflects innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. So look for that in the next 90 days or so. But the basic information and contact details are there at nova.edu/innovation.
Well, we call it a true club. So obviously, I'm the founder of .club, but that's okay. Carrie?
Yeah. So I think the question was, how do you find us and get started with us? And as John said, a big part of our job is making sure that you can find us. So we have our website and social media out there. We have a little bit of press that's showing what we're doing, and of course the Canadian government for those in Canada. But once you get on, so our process is just a little bit different. So you're essentially going to start on our website. You're going to register. So you're going to tell us a little bit about you and what you're working on. You're going to be accepted no matter what you put on that paper. And when you join, you're going to walk into a big glass building. It's a 3-story, glass building with a dome roof where you can look outside, and you're going to enter in front of a welcome desk. And then one of our concierges is going to start talking to you. So they're going to just find out who you are and make sure that your microphone works and ask if you want to customize your avatar and set up your profile. So your profile, in addition to the avatar on our system, is going to show your real picture. It's going to give your name, your languages, your location, your interests, your profession. If you want to link LinkedIn, social feeds like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those, you can link right on there. And then you're going to just learn a little bit about what's going on. So you're going to look at the program for the day. You're going to look at the services that are available. We might be making some suggestions to you about what might be interesting, but you're essentially just going to have a look at what you want to join and what you're interested in and what's coming up that fits your needs. And that's how our space. And maybe I can just add in our website as well. We're adaptika.tech, Adaptika with a K, so ADAPTIKA.tech.
That's great. And my daughter's actually in Canada. There's a bit of a selfish reason why I wanted to put the show on, because she just graduated from college. She wants to be an entrepreneur and launch a startup, and I think it would just be great for her to connect with your organization. Jeff, we haven't heard from you yet. I know you have a question.
Yep.
We'll open it up for the rest for Christine, Terry, and please be patient. We'll get to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Colin, and thank you, John and Carrie. John, I love the theme park analogy that you use, creating the Innovation Center as a theme park, because as everyone here probably knows, entrepreneurship is definitely an e-ticket ride. The theme park fits very nicely. One of the questions I had was, this is the Serial Entrepreneur Hour on Startup Club. So we talk a lot about serial entrepreneurs. Are the programs you've both created, the Innovation Center and Carrie with your metaverse worlds, is that ideally suited for first-time founders primarily, or is it something that even someone who's been down this path before as a serial entrepreneur could benefit from?
So that's a great question, Jeffrey. And before I answer it, I want to let you know, Colin, somebody in the listening audience that's actually working on our website development has informed me that we are going to be a .club. So thumbs up there. So in terms of the answer to that question, when we looked at innovation centers around the world, we clearly recognized that they were very much focused on that early stage entrepreneur. And what we wanted to do was do something different. So we studied models everywhere and looked at the pros and cons, and then also adapted it to the South Florida market, which is a little bit different than most places around the world. And when we talk about this theme park for entrepreneurs, it's at any stage. So it's for, I just have an idea, or I don't even have an idea, but I want to create one. How do I do it? Right down to the serial entrepreneur. And we've actually got members, and we have 8 different types of memberships here as one way of entry, where we've got serial entrepreneurs that are physically resident. They've been there, they've done it, and they're doing it again. So in our case, it's really the whole spectrum of the founder's journey from start through exit and beyond.
I know a good friend of mine, Oscar Diveroli, moved Validify, which is a very high growth company in South Florida. He had like huge offices, and then the pandemic hit. And when he went to see the Alan Levan Center, he fell in love with it right away, and he's moved his company into that center as well. So,
Yep, proud to have them.
Carrie?
Yeah, so we likewise, we are not, again, we're newer, so we're not as well developed as what John's describing, but we also are not catering to first-time entrepreneurs at all. What we find is what we're doing is new for a lot of people, and whether it's their first business or their 18th business, anybody who likes to rethink how they run their business is going to benefit from being in our incubator. And so by that, I have some friends in the Silicon Valley who have a specific structure and they run a lot of businesses and they copy the same structure every time. And I have a lot of friends who like to rethink systems and approaches and culture and tools and so on every time. And if we look at the last 2 years and we look at how much everything in the world has changed and we look at how new metaverses are, it makes sense for people at all stages and regardless of how many businesses they've run to start to consider new technology and look at interacting in that way.
But to clarify, you do support first-time entrepreneurs as well. I know you said we don't
Yeah.
use the words, we don't just looking at the wording you use there, but you do support first-time entrepreneurs as well.
We do. So a lot of the programming, we have an entrepreneurship course. So regardless of whether, if you're a first time entrepreneur, regardless of your background, you might be interested in looking at that course, or the example earlier of somebody who's newly graduated from college or university who's interested in getting involved, they might start at that point. So maybe a really early stage entrepreneur. I gave some examples earlier as well about just connecting people with resources that if you've run businesses before, you might have an accounting firm and a legal firm and M&A and all of that you're really comfortable with. If you haven't, we cover all of that on a weekly basis. We connect people with VCs of all sizes. So we do have angel investors, we have seed investors, but we also have much larger rounds available. So that's what I mean in terms of appealing to a broader group.
Thank you for both of those answers. And I think those are nice differentiating points that you can emphasize because in hearing a lot of other incubators speak, they're often catering more towards that first time founder. So the opportunities that you present for all stages of the journey, I think, are a positive differentiator for you both. Thank you.
Great. Christine, you've been very patient with us. You have a question for Carrie or John, or maybe, and if you're in the audience too, and you work in an incubator, an accelerator, or an innovation center, and you want to share your experience with us, the good and the bad, we'd love to have you on stage. That would be great to get some feedback.
Thanks for bringing me up here and holding the space. My question is this for Carrie. Sorry, Colin. Is it me
Yeah,
that was
no,
cutting
no,
in and
no,
out?
it's
I couldn't
probably
hear
me
you for a
causing it.
second.
I'm going on mute.
Okay, so my question is for Carrie. Am I best off? So I have it's a pretty big idea, a big goal, but it comes from 25 years of working within the corporate trustee, power of attorney, executor field. But it also comes from my personal situation as well, where I was born into a family with a very disabled child. And I now am looking after mom in a wheelchair, dad with dementia, a child with ADHD and DMDD, and her partner with significant anxiety, and my grandson with autism. And I realized the pathway to all of this is very broken. It's not easily navigatable. Caregivers are burning out at record numbers. Dementia numbers are on the rise, and I think people just have a really hard time navigating this journey from end to end. But because of my skills, my network, and my experience, I'm able to solve that problem. So I'm building this for currently 3 different regions. So that would be Peel, Halton, and Hamilton region. Am I best off to do this where I'm actually up and running and I've got all my pillars in place and gaining traction and I'm testing my MVP? Or am I better off to start with someone like you right from the very get-go before I start testing my MVP?
Yeah, awesome. So first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. It's been a really hard few years for everybody, but to be transparent and open and bring that forward is brave and it's led you to be able to solve problems for other people. So really awesome. I'm going to tell you from my experience and from advice that I've received, and people may have different advice for you, but if you wait until you have everything that you think needs to be in place, you probably won't get there. And it's not a judgment on you. You sound amazing. So my point is, you ideally ideally, and I come from a tech background, so this works really well in tech, right? Ideally, you want to have lots of really small test cases. So for your MVP, you really want to get it to the minimum viable product so that you're not spending a lot of time and money investing in something where the world and the need might change while you're creating that. And the pandemic is a good example of that, where maybe the need for what you have in mind is actually stronger. But if you did spend a couple of years investing in it and the world takes a 180, you suddenly have to start again. So I think you do these sprints as much as you can, where you get these small pieces out of the way. You do lots of interviews and user testing, and it sounds like you're well on your way. But yeah, get into it before you're ready. Get into it with the best intentioned plans and be very open to hearing how you might need to or want to adjust those along the way. And it sounds like what you're doing is exciting. I really hope we get to talk about it further, and you're close to home as well. So that's awesome. So thanks so much. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I just feel it would be unconscionable for me not to take my knowledge, my skill sets, and my network and create this ability for people to be able to navigate this with confidence and support without burning out, but having a clear pathway. So I've developed like 6 pillars of business, and it's really meant, and I brought in experts in every step of the way, whether they be doctors or whether they be financial experts or myself on the estate and trust planning side, or whether it's the in-home care, end of life planning, housing and transition. I've got a specialist for every single thing. And I just want to test very briefly. I'm not even looking at putting a bunch of tech involved. It's just, here's what it is. Here, give us 5 of your top clients between accountants and lawyers and wealth advisors. Give us 5 of your clients who are stuck in the muck, and let us help them out. Let us prove that this works. And then we can start. I think that's what I'm trying to do. And then I can really say, we know this works. I need now to develop the tech around it and everything else. So are you saying reach out to you now, or reach out to you when I've tested a couple of these cases?
You can reach out to us anytime. So what you're doing sounds incredibly interesting, and if we can help to support it or shape it in any way now, we will. And it sounds like you're right on track. That's, you want these pilot test cases. You want to see that you can run what you think you can run, that it responds the right way, that you make any iterations or adjustments that you need to. But there are ways that I believe that we can help at this stage. And if you want to get your footing and talk to a group like ours later, that's fine too.
Yeah, and you probably won't be happy to know that I'm actually launching another business in the next 60 days that's actually helping physicians all and practitioners all across the country for people with disabilities. It's all part and parcel of what we're doing. And the two often go hand in hand. You've got aging people, and you've got, eventually I want to morph this to being able to help caregivers, parents of disabled children, because again, that process is extremely broken as well. It's really hard to navigate. So I'm hoping to morph to that at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I
I'm
think a
just
lot
going
of
to
us.
chime.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, Carrie. Yeah, I
I was.
just want to chime in here a little bit. I think what you're talking about, Christine, is amazing. I love that you have a mission. I think that's critically important. Okay. I actually was involved in estate and trust planning for 20 years from the tax side. So it's this elusive, like crazy place to be for people. But I think the more you can break it down, like what Carrie was saying, in terms of what you're offering and how this is like filling this massive gap in the market, the better you are. Like the sooner you can do that, the better off you are. Obviously, if you have stats to provide, etc., that's fantastic. I say go for it, girl. That's like an amazing mission that you have. And there's people like Carrie and John that I think that can help you move it forward. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm actually speaking at Ed Sheridan, Carrie, at the end of February about all of their pieces, because the disability business, we're actually hiring predominantly people who are disabled. And we have a vision of creating a foundation there. We're going to actually put money into the foundation, and that foundation will grant monies out to charities that are solving digital literacy just to bridge the divide. If we're offering an online solution, we might as well make sure that as many people across Canada can access it as possible. So I said I wasn't going to do this business unless we did that. And the disabled people that we're hiring, I do want to be the first company in Canada to institute a group registered disability savings plan to help them save for retirement and get them out of their parents' basements. Let's get them employed, because I do believe that a job is the best philanthropy that we can ever bring to the market. So I will reach out to you and we'll have a conversation. Thanks so much.
Wow, that's amazing. Very smart and very ambitious, and I love it.
And Carrie and John, I know you're not a not-for-profit, Christine, but I love the social good behind what you're doing. But can non-for-profits use an incubator accelerator innovation center? Starting with you, John.
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. We already have examples of where that's taking place. So we'll look at not-for-profit, for-profit, and other, whatever that may be defined as. But we're open to all, assuming that the opportunity has a great chance of success.
Carrie?
Yeah, my answer is not a lot different. We're relatively agnostic to how you categorize your business at the stage that you join us, or down the road, or how many businesses you launch once you're with us. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to know that the effort that you're putting into building these centers and the virtual environments, et cetera, can also have a positive social impact on society, not just with positive with startups. Of course, it's great that you can help startups, but it goes beyond that. Terry, you've been patient. We'd love to have you share an experience about working in one of these centers or ask a question. Terry, the mute and the button in the right hand corner. If you're relatively new, you just turn it there.
I thought I clicked it and I thought it was still, I had clicked it and I had not. No, I was just up here just to say hi and in case I could help answer questions. But no, I'm good. I'm just happy that I get to work alongside John and the Levan Center of Innovation. Thank you.
That's great. So, is he a tough boss? Is he a nice boss? Does he motivate you?
Or a fun
I,
boss?
all of the above. No, it's awesome working because we've been a mighty team of three for a long time getting this off the ground, and so we have a very high expectations, but at the same time we have so much fun doing what we do. And because we've been, thankfully the entire team is very passionate about the work that we do, we've been able to accomplish a lot in a short amount of time.
That's great. Emmy, you're up next.
Hello, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Carrie, for this input. You've already answered some questions that I have. However, I do have some personal questions about my own startup. I've been in the tech for 4 years now, and I'm a web developer and a WordPress developer precisely. So I kind of decided to start my own company in 2019. I had this wonderful idea, which already exists, but however, not in my continent in Africa where I come from, in precisely Nigeria. People I have asked questions and asked professionals like me, people who ends and work online, and they all seem to be having the same issues when I brought up this idea. And they all seem to be having the same problem. Inquire and ask different professionals, different employers as well. So this is more like an Upwork platform. But however, we do not have this thing in Africa that is well functioning. And that's actually got me put my more interest in it. Make sure that I add more ideas to mine. Make sure that I put in more changes and get to meet what people need and what the users will want. So my question is this. I didn't really know about entrepreneurship. I didn't really know much about it, and I didn't really know much about pitching and MVP and all of that. However, I had a little idea of it, and to be honest with you, I kind of had to implement everything with my own resources, with my time, my money, and then I built it up and from the scratch to what the people were expecting. Probably not everything has been added yet, but however, I did build all of that, and with the help of my colleagues whom I actually paid to assist me on it, they did a very good and nice job. 2020, I decided to launch the company, pre-launch it actually, because we are still building the mobile apps, and that includes Android and iOS. After that, I kind of started having, more knowledge about pitching and MVP, getting to talk to investors and all. However, I haven't really tried to reach out to any investors. Why? Because I had this conversation with a business developer, and he told me that it's not wise to get investors into my business currently because I am still starting out, and that I need to finish up the whole development and the designing, this including designing, and start the company fully, launch it fully before I start inviting or accepting investors. That is the advice he gave me. I took a little bit of the advice and pre-launched the company. And at the same time, I think I made a big mistake, you know, for not pitching it and not creating an MVP for it before pre-launch. So I wanted to ask Carrie because I think she has more idea and more answers to this question. So I wanted to ask her, is it wrong? Have I done anything wrong already, or can things be changed during this time as well?
Yeah, the advice you got. So, a lot of people are going to tell you that equity is the most valuable thing that you have in your business. And hopefully that's true, right? So people will say it's as valuable as your own child. You don't want to give it up unless you absolutely have to, need to, want to. So when you need investment in your business, there are different ways that you can look at accessing those funds. So really broadly speaking, we can look at like debt, we can look at loans. If hopefully you can also look at grant funds. So a lot of people will advise you to go after free, I'm air quoting, but free money. So grant funds will often be either not require cash from you, or they'll be leveraged. They'll require that you contribute some, but they will double or triple or quadruple that. And then again, in really broad buckets, then your next one is investment. With an investor, you are typically giving up equity, right? So at that stage, you want to make sure that what you're giving up, that it makes sense for you, that you have a plan where you know how much equity you have over time, how you're going to access additional funds if you are. So if you're going to have additional fundraising rounds, how much are you willing to give up at different points? What is a fair valuation for your company today? There are lots of other programs, right? So you can look at friends and family kind of funding. You can look at Kickstarter sort of funding if it's just about getting some cash into the company. But when you're ready to actually look at giving up equity, you do want to be careful about knowing what your plan is for that equity, knowing what you're getting for it. So often as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at strategic investors. So it's not just do they have cash that they can put in, but what are my goals in the short, even long term, and how can this group help me to meet those goals? So if it's scaling, I need a group that knows how to scale and they know how to open up entities in different countries, and they're going to save me time and guide me on that. If it's management, senior or mid-level, that they're going to come in and help with that. If it's specific expertise in whatever technology or whatever it is, which sounds like that's your background anyway. So are they the right fit, right? As much as they're looking at you for the right fit, are they the right fit for you? You can make any of those decisions at any point in your venture, and you can make mistakes as well. So I don't think you've made a mistake, and it's not my place to say whether you have or not, but you can look at any of these avenues when it makes sense for you, and you can change your mind.
Wow, that's great. That's a great answer, Emmy. I was going to ask John as a follow up. What does your innovation center do to help startups raise money?
I'll answer that by expanding upon what Emmy was just talking about. Again, it's hard to give advice without knowing enough details, but for someone in your position, I would encourage you to find your innovation center or your incubator or equivalent model wherever you may reside, or maybe it's a virtual accessible one. Carrie is just talking about, well, what we would do in that particular case is we would see, again, where you are, make an assessment, and then we would introduce you to resident companies that are co-invested as strategic partners in our innovation center. So we've identified strategic brands that you'll be fully aware of, whether they're local or regional or national or even international in terms of their exposure. And you'll be sitting with them and they will say, hey, we can help you and we can design this for free, or we can do it at a significantly reduced cost, or we can be partners in your project as you move forward. So that's one example of how you could potentially get funding for your initiative. I can tell you, without naming the name, there is a particular company that was working on an app that was going all over the place, and hundreds of thousands of dollars had been wasted over years. And when they got introduced to a particular company that specialized in it, they were able to streamline and actually invest into the company because they believed in the concept. So the entrepreneur didn't know anything about technology, but they knew something about a challenge that needed a solution. And this tech company said, we'll partner with you and we'll design this for free in exchange for equity. So that's one way. In our particular case in South Florida, when you look at an innovation ecosystem, there are generally approximately 8 different categories that make up an innovation ecosystem. And in South Florida, there are 2 where there are some gaps. One is access to qualified skilled talent in the emerging tech sector, and the other is access to capital. So love money is plentiful, your aunts, your uncles, your friends, your family members, but access to the venture capital and angel investment networks can be a little bit challenging, particularly for the early stage entrepreneurs that don't know what kind of money they should look for. And there's a formula. You need the right plan, the right people, and the right money. And any one of those that's not right could be detrimental to the future of your success. So what we're doing is we're building this menu of appetizers, entrees, and desserts, identifying all of the potential funding sources that exist, from angel investors to venture capitalists to grants to other sources. And then what we'll do is we'll look at opportunities and then cross-reference that based on the demographic of the type of, in quote, investor that's looking for an opportunity like yours, so that we can customize, because every investor is different. And when people go out to find money, they often take the very first penny that's thrown at them, or they don't know where to look. And what we're going to do is minimize the risk for you and put you in touch with those that will be the most valuable partner moving forward and give you the opportunity to at least make your pitch. And then we take it from there.
That would be, I'd love to do a show on raising money, especially when it comes to government money. I've talked often on Startup Club, Carrie, that because of my Canadian roots, that the government can help you. And even here down in Fort Lauderdale, we applied for a $350,000 grant to help build our incubator as well. And the money does exist. It's just so complicated. It's hard to find that government money. Any thoughts on that, Carrie?
Yeah, it is. It can be a little bit of a bureaucratic mystery to access it. In Canada, there are a lot of options available. There are a lot of people who will advise you on where to look, and they'll do it for free. There are people who will advise you on where to look, and they will ask for a cut in any funds that you get. So there are a lot of ways to navigate that, to just find out what's available, expectations on. So with grant funds in particular, they're going to be looking at eligibility criteria for both you as a company and your project. You're going to be looking at what's available. Is it a good fit for me? When should I expect that it's coming up? How, detailed is my application process? Is there somebody who can guide me or help me with the application process? And do I have to pay them or not? And if I do have to pay them, can I pay them later? So can I give them a cut of the funds that come through? So all of those services that do exist, we can help navigate some of that for you. But you're looking at, within Canada, you're looking at like innovation. So there's a whole list. We can maybe take that part offline.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
another good reason to join one of these centers in your respective
yeah,
countries, is to figure
yeah.
out how to get that kind of government funding, because you're not going to figure it out by simply Googling. I tell you, it's complicated. It's
I'll
complicated.
give you, I think all of us would love to continue the conversations, and we can do that in our, however we want to, but certainly our places of work. But keep in mind, I feel like a few people have touched on this a little bit, but a lot of your colleges and universities will also have research and innovation mandates with funding. So have a look at if you're searching online for government funding and you're not finding it easily, but you have something that you want to build or develop, whether it's tech or actual hardware or something physical, or you just want to test out an idea, or you want some help with like developing your UX UI designs. A lot of the colleges and universities have programs to support that, and they will help you apply for grant funding to fund that. In some cases, 100% of the funding, and in other cases, as I mentioned earlier, you might be putting in some in-kind funds or some actual cash contributions.
No, that's great. I know we're running out of time here. We're going over time. Jeff, you've been very patient. If you have a question or an experience, please share it with us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Yeah, I just want to ask. I have a business partner, a coaching associate, and started in the incubator space, working in incubators. And after over 10 years in the space, helping a lot of entrepreneurs, just realized that probably the most important thing for the entrepreneur actually is understanding, are they actually an entrepreneur first? They have a lot of innovation happening, a lot of ideas coming to the market space, but do they have all the necessary abilities to turn that idea into an actual viable business? And I'm just curious, from your experiences at your incubators, how are you addressing that? Or is everyone walking in the door just considered to be equal and we'll just find out if they have it or not? Or are you trying to identify their abilities to actually become true entrepreneurs?
So I'll answer that. I like that we're going over time. It's like a good hockey game. The answer is, when I was growing up and young, I was told that I couldn't be an entrepreneur. It has to be born within your blood. So I made that my mission to prove the world wrong, and I became a successful entrepreneur with a very successful exit. And I've used that as a lesson, and that you can shape somebody to be an entrepreneur. It's about giving them guidance and resources, and then learning from mistakes along the way. And in our particular model, we actually work with those that say, I don't know how to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what one is. I don't think I could ever be one. And we're developing programs that are pipelines into other programs as they mature that allows them to advance. So I personally believe that almost anybody can be an entrepreneur, and some of them are born with it in the blood, and it's just in the heart from the very get-go. But almost anybody can be an entrepreneur, and there are many people that are entrepreneurs without even defining themselves as. They don't even know that actually is what they are. So educating and creating awareness to tell them that what you actually are, and here's the different types of steps that you can take to be a successful entrepreneur moving forward. And it comes down to mentorship and programs and program facilitators and different resources that we can put around you.
Yeah, I love that answer. I think the only thing that I'll add, which I don't disagree with anything John said, but I think one thing our programs could maybe help with as well is, do you want to be an entrepreneur? So whether or not you feel that you were born that way, there is pressure there. It does require grit. It requires you to give up a lot. And so do they know what it may require of them, and do they want to make that choice?
Oh, that's great. And getting into an innovation center, helping these individuals launch their startup, helping them recognize the greatness that exists within each and all of us. I never thought about that, John and Carrie, but it's true. You really are helping a lot of these people reach their full potential. And I think, we all appreciate that. Look, this has been a great show. If you missed it or you came in late, you can catch it on replay. You can go to www.startup.club. If you like the speakers here, I know I followed John, I followed Carrie, I followed you, Emmy, and Jeff, and I really enjoyed having you come on stage. It was a great show. And if you like these speakers also, and you want to hear about more speakers coming up, go sign up to the email list, because we've had Jeffrey Moore, we've had Vern Harnish. Last week we had John Mullins, who wrote the Customer Funded Startup. We keep getting top speakers like the ones we had today on Startup Club, but you're not going to know about them unless you're on that email list. So I really encourage you to sign up to that. Thank you very much, John and Carrie. It was a great show. Next week we are talking about how to build the right team for your startup. And in the future, Carrie, I'd love to do a session on how the metaverse could help startups, April or May, if you're available. Really appreciate it again. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Bye for now.